Welcome to Moment the Other Way, a podcast about your journey and finances. I'm your host, James. We have Peggy and Wanda with us. We're talking about time.
Generally, I like to have three topics or three points that I want to emphasize during our time together. Yet today, I just want to talk about time in generality because it's really the most valuable thing you have.
I feel like that's the first thing you told me when I met you, when we were talking about like investing and when I became a client. So that was the first thing you were talking about, was time is like your biggest asset.
It's also your biggest liability. Same.
Yeah, and that's funny that he right away went to that and put it towards the investing, which I get. Time is immensely important in your investing. But I often tell people that time is the most valuable thing I own. My time is the most valuable thing that I own.
Which is why I'm not entirely sure that we can come to three things when there's really only one thing. The most important thing to recognize is that time is your most important asset. It's important for you to plan your finances. And when you schedule time with us, we have spent time, energy, and resources, our valuable time, energy, and resources, in creating a plan for our time together so that it is effective to help you get what you want out of the time. So we've spent time ahead of you. You don't come into our office and we say, la, 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 oh, who are you again? But we have spent time looking at your numbers and evaluating so that we can be effective when we're together. That's our time investment in you.
Right. And you can improve that time with us by sending us questions you have in advance.
Because your time is valuable too.
We try to be respectful of your time. We ask that. We send reminder emails, and then we ask people to give us their questions. If we have to do research or if we need to look at something specific, we can do that before you arrive so that our time together is more productive. So that's, appointment time with our clients. So that time is important, right? It's important to me. It's important to you.
I was reading a thought leader last week, and they said that it is rare that we know 1% of what's going on in another person's life. So what I know about you, it would be rare that I even know 1% about you, even though we work together every day. And same for a client. And you can think about that in terms of a relationship with a loved one, somebody you might even be married to, committed to, that kind of thing. There are things that surprise you about them all the time. It's consistently. And so going to the value of time and your time with us, if we're only knowing 1% of you, as much as you can let us know about you, we're going to want to know to help you get to the place that you want to go. And so your time is valuable. And you don't come see us because you don't have anything to do. May as well go see a financial advisor. But there are things in your head that you want to accomplish as well. And so clarifying that ahead of the appointment is going to be a good investment on your part to get something out of our time together. We will ask you about expectations of our time in the appointment. Yet if we've known it ahead of time, right, to Peggy's point, we can take a look at things specifically to address the things that are top of mind for you.
And then, so, time being so important in your investments, so important, start today. We say that a lot, right? Take the first step, start today. And the sooner you start, the better.
Absolutely.
I want to add, Wanda, you've talked about this a lot, the method of Kaizen, of step-by-step continuous improvement.
Right.
But one of the big takeaways of it is that small changes now can lead to large impact changes in the future.
So I think the biggest Kaizen, or the biggest movement forward, is making an appointment with a financial advisor, because out loud you say the things that are important to you. A great financial advisor will cause you to say those things out loud. And in identifying them, that is the first step. And allowing another human to get that insight from you allows then that person, us, to then say, let's do the thing. And the thing might be paying off your credit card debts every month on time. That might be the thing. Or the thing might be, I really need to have about $1,000 or $5,000 in savings, or whatever that number is. That might be the thing. And then you can go away and think about it. And the human brain's an amazing thing. When you come back and see us again, you will have figured out ways to get you from here to there. Now, we're going to give you some ideas, but one of those is going to click for you, and then you're going to move that direction. And so that's that idea of Kaizen, which is one of the reasons we do quarterly appointments, because we don't expect instant success.
I was thinking this would be a good time to explain compounding interest. You had brought it up previously, and I think this would be good to explain for those who don't understand what compounding interest is.
So it's one of those and topics. And one of the stories that you hear is the story of, would you take a penny compounded daily, or would you take $1 million today? Which one would you do? Which one would you take? And this is an illustration of compounding.
I'd probably take the penny.
Right.
Right.
But
Well, that example usually is the penny doubled each day, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You take a penny and you double it each day, and you double that value each day. And then by the end of like 30 days, you have $1 million.
Yeah.
No, actually, interestingly, right, this is an interesting thing. At the end of the 27th day, right, you'll have about 671K, not quite the $1 million. At the end of the 28th day, right, then you'll be at 1.3. And then at the end of 29 day, and then at the end of the 30 days, right, then you'll have the 5 million. But yet, right, that part of us that says, look, I can have $1 million today is much more attractive than a penny compounded, because that's a future event.
Yeah.
The compounding. And so that's the illustration of compounding. Interestingly, too, I find about that is it's not in the second day or the third day or the fourth day that it's interesting. It's in the 27th day that it's interesting. And then it becomes vastly interesting. I mean, like compounded exponentially interesting. And that's how it is with investing. So you start where you are, and then you become 100-aire, and then you go to 1,000-aire, and then you go to 100,000-aire. And then it becomes far more interesting for my families when they hit like $250,000, because generally $1 million's right around the corner. A quarter, and then $500,000's around the corner. And then, again, right. And then that's to that point of money makes money. Because if I'm earning, and again, I can't guarantee any return on investments, but if I'm earning 10%, 10% on $1,000 is only $10. But on $1 million, it's $100,000. We're starting to talk real money. So, so the growth appears greater to the point about money makes money. So that is a illustration that's used, that penny of compounding. Yet how does it work in your investment accounts? And so in your investment accounts, you make money 3 ways: on dividends, on capital gains, and on capital value. So capital value is that idea that the market tomorrow will be greater than the market is today, with some hiccups, right? But the market tomorrow. And so in general, right, you'll see your investments, if you don't touch your investments in general, broadly invested, they're going to be worth more tomorrow than they are today. That's capital value. Easy to see, easy to watch the S&P 500 and say, look, the S&P is up. Dividends are a return on earnings that a company might give you in cash, quarterly, monthly, annually, something like that. So dividends are the companies that we're not going to be able to spend the money to make more money, so we're going to give you dividends back on your stock in our company. And generally, you'll see that in bigger companies, not so growth oriented, but more like a service oriented, like a Procter and Gamble or like a bank. So dividends are in there nominally, and if you're buying more shares, right, that goes to the compounding effect. And then the third thing is, if I buy a stock low and sell it high. We've talked a little bit about that before. But if I buy a stock at a certain price, right, and then it increases, right, and interesting, because I was just looking at Apple this morning. In 1980, it was worth $20 a share. It took 20 years for it to grow to $40 a share, right? So 20 years, which was about a 3% rate of return for 20 years. But needless to say, since then, it's done extraordinarily well. Some hiccups this year. So if I sold it for 20, right, then that would be that $10. And if I took that $10 and bought other stocks, right, then that's also compounding. So 3 things, right? My capital value, the market will grow. Dividends, if the dividends are reinvested, that allows me to buy more stock. And then capital gains, right? Buying low, selling high.
Peggy, you had mentioned, start now.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you approach a situation where maybe someone has started later in investments? How do they catch up? This time is huge for compounding interest. It was in my finance class. They said they put a calculator, and obviously this is all hypothetical in a
Right.
vacuum, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
they started your Roth IRA at 20, and then they did max contributions all the way to 30, and
Right.
then stopping contributions
Stop.
totally at
Mm-hmm.
30. And so no more until you're 59 and a half. And then they did starting at 30 and then maxing every year till 59. And you still have more money in your Roth at 20. That's what they taught me in finance class. One, is that accurate? And two, if you are in the starting after you're 30, how do you maximize your ability to catch up here?
So many things there, right?
I know it's a lot.
So are those accurate? Maybe. Um, it's hard because there's all the variables, right? So yes, it's better if you started in your 20s. That's just a fact, right? Because we know that compounding money. However, if you start in your 30s, you can still get there, right? If you start in your 40s, you can still get there. Yes, it may be more difficult. So much there's so many variables, right? That's why we always say start now. Because if you start now, you're definitely better off than if you wait 5 years,
Yeah.
right? And so it's so important to start and just take the first steps to begin. And even if you're just starting with a little bit of money, and then people get discouraged because, oh my goodness, I'm 40 and I don't have any retirement savings, or I have this little bit from this job, or I have 5 different jobs and this money is in 5 different places and 401k is sitting there and nobody's paying attention to it. And so it's important that you just begin, and then you talk to a financial advisor and they will help walk you through how to get where you want to go. So I think the most important thing is just to start. You know, when somebody comes to us and they say, "Okay, well I want to retire in 3 years." And they have never worked with a financial advisor. And maybe some people do that and they come and they have a lot of money. And usually it's in multiple locations, right? We have some over here, we have some over there, we did this, we did that, whatever. And and then we can help them and get them to where they want if we're, lucky, or if they are willing to put in the work and whatever they've done. Others come and they haven't done anything and they're still going to be better off because they're going to start. And I think that's the biggest thing is you have to
Mm-hmm.
begin and talk to somebody. And the sooner you talk to somebody, the better, just to get clarity on where you want to go and how you're going to get there.
It's an interesting thing, right, that you asked that question, James. I think it's an important question. Um, and that is a true statement. If you invest for those first 10 years versus the latter 10 years, you can look at that in the hypotheticals. I think then the time component becomes much more important in that, do you have the time to figure out what strategy you can get you towards your retirement? And in that, a financial advisor, it seems like we're pegging on this time thing, but in that, a financial advisor has probably seen the situation before and knows how to use every component that's available to you, whether it's a workplace, a benefit, or whether it's your taxes, or whether it's a way that you can leverage what you have. And we have the ability to create strategies for you to get to the next place. So then your time even becomes more valuable the older you are. And interestingly enough, I think as I get older, I recognize that my time is more valuable. I want to be more stingy with my time because it's finite.
Well, and it goes faster, right? There's that whole
It
thing
seems to
about
go faster.
it
Yeah,
seems
because
like
you've
it's going
experienced.
faster the older you get.
But
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
makes sense though, because when you're younger, you've had such a limited perspective of time.
Yeah.
Whereas the older, you've seen time in a longer form. And so
That's true. Yeah.
therefore a year doesn't, like, when you're a kid, a year seems like such a long time. I remember probably like 7 years old, and my uncle gave me like a check coupon thing that would be available in like 2 to 5 years time or something like that I could use towards something. And I was like, well, this seems worthless. But the
Right.
thing is, like, now it's like 2 to 5 years. Holy cow, that actually goes a lot by faster than you think it does.
Right, right, right. You've been with
It
us
really
over a
does.
year,
And
right? It's like, woo, like that, right? It seems like just,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, I agree. And I think that, going back to the investing in your 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that I personally wish that I had done more of that. But I think that I like when we get clients and they're early, and I mean, everybody does, right? Well, I guess that's not really true because a lot of times they come to you and they don't have a lot of assets. So we help them build their assets.
Right.
However, I I often tell them, right now, let's put, X dollars. And it might seem like a lot sometimes to them. It's like, yes, but once you're married and you have children and you have all these other things, you may not be able to invest as much. That's just a fact, right? You're young. Remember when you got your first paycheck and you were like 16 and you had all that money and it was just seemed like so much, right? It was your very first paycheck and you didn't have any bills, right?
And then you
I'm going
get
to tell,
bills.
And you had all
yeah,
that money,
right.
right? And what did you do with it? Nothing. You did all
Yeah.
these silly
So
things with it, which is great.
2 points there, right? To the point about, I wish I had known things in my 20s, which is one of the reasons I'm very passionate about getting these podcasts out so that
Mhm.
somebody will be in their 20s and capturing the information. And then I'm going to tell
Yeah.
a war story. Not that I tell a lot of military war stories, but back in the day, we used to get a paper check from the military. And so on payday, you would get out information, everyone would get out information, and the first sergeant would call you up and you'd get your paycheck and you fall back in the formation. And when the privates would come up and they would make like the little bit of money, like $500, he would say, he would give them their check and he would say, this is you are the richest you will ever be in life. This is the most money and you have the least responsibility. I mean, frequently they didn't have a car. They didn't have car insurance. There was no gadgets. They didn't have a house. They didn't rent. They didn't have renter insurance. They didn't have a spouse. So they had the mess hall. And so he was right when he said, this is the most money that you'll ever have. When you're 20s, that is the most money you'll ever have. Because from there, it's just more and more responsibility. That was
Yeah.
Right.
my
I
war story.
agree. And I think kids now that start younger and they're working, you mentioned gadgets and they have gadgets and they have Spotify and they have YouTube and they have all
Mm,
these things that they're paying for. They have a phone and I'm just like, oh my goodness. So they already have all those things,
right.
right? But if they start investing at that time and then they get a significant other and then they get rent and then they get, a marriage and then they get children and all of those things whittle down what you're making. I mean, your ability to save may be lessened in your 30s than it was in your 20s.
Right.
So that's just another factor of how important time is.
So we wanted to talk. I wanted to say two things, right? The thing about compounding, right? But the other thing about your investments is there are three things that will affect your personal investments, and I talk about this frequently. It's time, amount that you put away, and rate of return.
Right.
And from our penny example, you can see that the time can become the most valuable asset.
Right.
So time, amount, and rate of return, and those are the three things that you have control over for the most part.
Peggy, you were mentioning getting people started, start now. What do you think is the biggest holdup that you
Fear.
see
Fear.
from
It's
starting?
fear. I think it's fear. People get discouraged. They don't think they can do it. They don't think they have the money to invest, or they don't think that an investment advisor wants to speak to them, or they're afraid to show somebody how they spend their money,
Mm,
which we don't judge, right? I think it's just fear, a lot of fear in the whole investment thing. Oh, I'm going to put it in the market. And if you watch the media and depending on what news you're looking at, that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know. That's what I think it is. What do you think it is, Wanda?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, fear. And I think fear at the level of losing control. Talking about time today. And so giving somebody time, a lot of people mistaken and think money is the most important thing. They think, oh, hey, if I have money, right, that becomes a higher value to them than time, especially, well, at all ages, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
if it is a high value to you, then you're talking to somebody about something that is a high value to you personally. So I'm afraid that you're going to judge me, that you're going to tell me I did it wrong, that you're going to take it away from me. All of these fears, when in fact, we really want to will your good. We want to tell you yes and to figure out a way to telling you yes. And we are not in the business of looking at the past. We're looking here in the present and where the potential is for the future. But
Right.
fear is the thing I think that it causes people like, maybe I won't be able to achieve my goals. Maybe it's too late. Maybe, but that's not true.
Right. And doing nothing is a decision.
It's
Right.
true. Yeah. The most important thing for time is making the decision to take the time to start. And whether you do it yourself or with a financial professional that has many experiences, I would argue that it is better to do the
Right.
latter than the former.
Mm-hmm.
But take the time to do it. And I think that's the big takeaway. Take the time to do it.
Well, thank you
Agreed.
for listening to One Went the Other Way, a podcast about your journey in finances. We hope that you learned a lot about time today and the value of it. If you want to schedule an appointment with Wanda or Peggy, you can find us at financesforreallife.com. It will be in the show notes. Just click the link, and you can find on the top right of the screen the schedule an appointment button. So please do that if you are interested. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube currently, and we post every 2 weeks. So see you in the next episode.
Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Finances for Real Life, a registered investment advisor and separate entity from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.